Hello, everyone. Welcome to the I Will Aim podcast. Our topic for today is hidden disabilities, and my special guest, Michelle Steiner. Michelle lives with an invisible disability. She has article published on the mighty nonverbal learning project Dysculia blog, the Reluctant Spoonie, Calopenia Collective, Imagine the World as One Magazine, and the World Word Gathering. Her photographs were featured in Word Gathering Independent and Work Ready. She has worked as paraeducator in a school with students with disabilities. She lives in Pennsylvania with her husband and her two cats. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
I'm looking forward to our conversation and
Yeah.
also want to educate myself too. Let's start first with the first question. Can you share a bit about your journey?
Sure. Well, my name is Michelle Steiner. I have a learning disability. I was diagnosed with a learning disability whenever I was in kindergarten. My teacher saw that I was really struggling in the classroom with just being able to count, tying my shoes. Visual perception was also really hard for me. And I was just struggling socially and academically. And my teacher recommended that I get tested for having a learning disability. And sure enough, I have one. And I had to repeat kindergarten the following year. And school was a real struggle for me socially and academically. I really struggled in the classroom. I had specialty instruction, and I also had to go and have accommodations, such as having the test read aloud to me and extended test time. And I can just remember the struggle and feeling like it's really hard for me to learn. It's really difficult for me to do all of those things. And I thought life was always going to be hard. And I can remember I had people who didn't think that I could handle a lot they tried to limit me a lot. I had a learning support teacher who didn't think I could handle going to college. So she suggested a trade school, which nothing there interested me. I've had psychiatrists who have told me that I was not going to go beyond community college. I've also had people that were telling me I would have limited job choices, and just people didn't think I was going to accomplish very much. And it was really hard for me to hear all that, and I was pretty negative. But when I finally started using accommodations and I had the right program, then I could be successful. I was able to graduate with my bachelor's degree eventually.
Wow.
Yeah, telling me I couldn't do it. And after graduation, I knew that I definitely wanted to help other people that had disabilities. So that has inspired a lot of what I do. It has inspired my blog, Michelle's Mission, where I talk about life with a learning disability. And it's also really encouraged me, along with working with students, as a
Well, thank you for sharing your very inspiring story. And
parent.
you went through a lot, but in spite of it all, you were able to find, the reason to actually come out. And now, what I'm really thankful for is you're now sharing that message with other people. That even when people might say you might not be able to do it, you yourself know it better than anyone else.
Right.
And thank you. Your message will be an inspiration to a lot of people. Thank you. The next section is about shout out. I want to dedicate this episode to my coach for over 13 years, Jackie Yoon. Jackie Yoon has been the person that I always call when I have things going on, someone that I could lean on and shared my thoughts and give me some perspective. So, who do you want to shout out this episode to?
I have two people. I have my husband Ron, who I've been married to for 9 years. We've been together for that, and he's been my rock. And I also want to give a shout out to my parents, John and Carmel Ray. They have always been there for me, supporting me and advocating for me, and I couldn't have made it without them.
Thank you for doing the shout out. Let's start with the first question. Can you start by explaining what is hidden disabilities? How does it differ with other disabilities?
Sure. A hidden disability is a disability that you're not able to see. Whereas if you would look at a more visible disability, people can see them. People are able to tell when someone has a physical disability. But sometimes, though, when you have a disability people can't see, it still creates issues for you, but you're just not a other people can't see it.
Thank you for explaining that. What are some of the common misconceptions about hidden disability that you encounter? and how can we work to dispel that myth?
Sure. A lot of times when I tell people I have a learning disability, often they might think, oh, well, you don't look like you're disabled. And I have to explain to them, well, yeah, I have a hidden disability and you may not be able to see it, but it's still there. A lot of people also hear the term learning disability and they think I can't learn. Further from the truth, I am able to learn. I just need to find a way to do it. Other times people might say, oh, well, you can't have a disability because you have a bachelor's degree or you've achieved this or you got that answer correct. And I have to explain why I have had success, but that's because I found a way around it. And I think it just goes back to that thing with hidden disabilities. There's some where people can't see. People can't see autism. People aren't able to see chronic pain. But those are still some conditions that are hidden, but still impact the person's life.
Well, thank you for explaining that to my audience. I think it's really important for people to be more sensitive to what's going on and not just jump to conclusion and sort of to a certain degree. I even think sometimes people made assumptions, right? And I think that
Right.
sometimes is not really good and fair to people. So thank you for actually dispelling that myth. Can you share a personal story or experience that highlighting the challenge that you went through?
I think sometimes just some of the challenges that I might end up facing are if I get a new supervisor, that can be a real challenge for me too, because sometimes I have to explain once again that I have a learning disability and I cannot do math. And all the students I work with, they know, do not ask me to help you with math or they soon will find out. And just sometimes that can be really challenging with having a hidden disability because people look at me and they think, oh, well, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do that? Or you'll learn along with the kids. And I just have to, it's really important for me to share that I do have one. And it's just, this is what I need.
Thank you for sharing that. What are steps can people in society take to increase awareness in the understanding of hidden disability? How do we spread the word? And podcast is one way we're doing this, and I really appreciate you being my guest. But what else can we do? I felt like there's a
I
lot of things we could do.
Right. I think one of the biggest things is to listen to people because a lot of times people will make assumptions because they can't see it. So they might think that I might be lazy or they might think that I'm unmotivated to do something. And I think it's just listening to the person and what their needs are because everybody is going to be different. And when somebody says, oh, I have a disability, it's like, okay, I'm going to listen. Like, this is just a fresh, I've never heard of that before, too, because I think even if somebody has the same disability, they're going to experience it differently. Everybody's going to need something slightly different. And I think it's that listening and that understanding and that respecting someone that just because you're not able to see the disability, it is valid, it is real, and just seeing what that each individual person needs.
I think well, while you're saying that, one quote that comes to mind is Stephen Covey: "Seek to understand." Right?
Yes.
And I love that. Seek to understand. Don't jump to conclusion. Don't make any assumption. And I love that you emphasize on and listening because that's really important. That in any given situation,
Hmm.
if you're not understanding it, focus on understanding the other person's perspective. Thank you for sharing that.
You're so
What type of
welcome.
support is most beneficial for individual with hidden disability in the workplace or in education?
I think some of the things that can be really important is definitely offering customized accommodations. Even as I said, having it being customized for the person is really important because everyone will experience it differently. And we want to have a customized plan rather than just kind of rubber stamp on someone that has a disability. And I think having clear communication is also important because sometimes if someone feels safe, they're more open to share their disability, and I think that's really important to offer that space so somebody can be able to share what is on their mind and what they're thinking.
I think you mentioned of making people feel safe. It's a concept of psychological safety, creating an environment where people could share things either they're going through or things that they felt they need to speak to people about. I think that's really important. Can you discuss how individual with hidden disability can advocate for themselves.
That is wonderful to be able to do that. I know whenever I'm at my job, it's real important that I advocate for myself because people can't see the disability. And that's just such an important thing to do. So, one of the things that you want to do when you're going to advocate is you want to know what your issue that you're struggling is, and you want to make sure that you set up a time to meet with your boss or your supervisor. Sometimes that can be an email. Sometimes that can also just be maybe you pass by them in the hall and just say, "Do you have a few minutes? I'd like to schedule a time to talk with you." And it's going into that meeting and it's calmly stating what difficulties you have and just what are some ways that may work for you. Sometimes I might have to do this if somebody they know that I can't do math, and I'm in a classroom and they're giving me math that I can't do, or they're expecting me to help a student in a way that I'm not able to do that. So I'll calmly state what difficulties I'm having and just what are some of the ways that can help. Sometimes that might be changing a schedule around. And if they can't change your schedule, sometimes that might also be just so the teacher understands just you're walking around helping to redirect students, but not teaching math. And I think that is just really important that you stay calm. And it's also important to be really positive too, because a lot of times a place might be thinking a person with a disability is going to be a liability. But really, a person with a disability can be a really valuable asset to an organization.
Thank you for sharing that. I think I love the fact about having a conversation. Often when we're not sure what to do, that's not something we normally would do. And thank you for mentioning that. So when we want to advocate for ourselves, the first thing we should do is have a conversation with the person that we work with, so they can better understand who we are and what and how they could help us. And I love the fact that you mentioned about staying calm and being positive. What advice would you give to friends, family members, or colleague who wants to offer meaning support?
I think the most important thing is to encourage the people not to give up on the person with a disability. I know my family never gave up on me. My parents worked with the school to make sure that I had the accommodations that I needed, but they encouraged also the process, but not necessarily the end product. They didn't expect me to have perfect grades. I just had to do my best. But I did have to go to school even when I wasn't going to do well on a test or I was having problems with a peer. And we spent a lot of long, tearful homework sessions at times where we both were frustrated, but we worked together and I just had to do my best. And I think sometimes, too, with friends, it's also really important that friends are there for somebody that might be struggling when the person with the disability has some problems. I can remember I was really struggling in a math class whenever I was at community college. And my friends couldn't fix it. They couldn't change my grade. They couldn't go in and tutor me. What they could do was be my friend. And I can just look back on those years and see the support of my friends. And I can also look back and see the support of my family.
Well, thank you for mentioning about support. So support is immensely important, especially in those challenging times. We talk a lot about hidden disability, and thank you for shedding some light about it and giving people a perspective of how to actually be able to support people with hidden disability. If we have three takeaway for today's episode, what are those three takeaway that you want people to remember?
What I'd love people to remember is that some disabilities are visible, meaning that you can see them, and other ones are hidden, meaning that you may not be able to see the disability, but both disabilities are still there, still are valid. I also want to mention that accommodations really do help workers with disabilities to be able to do their job and to thrive. Without accommodations, it's really hard for a person with a disability to be able to perform the job. Sometimes the accommodations are very simple, they're not that difficult to provide, and also not to give up on the person that has a disability. You want to be able to provide that support and encouragement and really listen to that person that has the disability as well.
I think the last one is very powerful, important. Is never giving up on that person and providing
Mhm.
encouragement and support. I learned a lot from you today. I'm really very thankful that we had this episode today. Uh, can you share with my audience what are the work that you do? How might they be able to reach out to you? You mentioned you have a blog, so I'm going to add that link to the blog when I post my episode when I post the episode. Can you share with my audience how to reach you, the project that you're working on, and things like that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I work as a paraeducator in a school, and I help the teacher in the classroom. Sometimes when I work as a teacher's aide, my work might be reinforcing a concept that the teacher was teaching that maybe a student's really struggling to understand. So I'll work with the student one on one to be able to work on that concept. I also do things such as reading tests to students, and I also show them how they can advocate for themselves. And I think this is really important because a lot of our students, they really struggle with asking for help. I can remember I had a student a couple of years ago that was really afraid to ask for help. And I showed her, well, this is how you can do this. And I showed her how that she could ask for that. And I went with her. And before I knew it, she was already asking for help. Sometimes it's helping them to organize their backpacks or just simply listening. Sometimes our students need to hear that message that they can do it. A lot of times it's like hearing a recording myself at that age. And I also have a blog called Michelle's Mission where I combine my passion of writing, photography, and speaking as well. I write about life with a learning disability, and I also feature my photography. I'm not able to drive because of my disability. So oftentimes when I can't get a ride, I get to literally stop and smell the roses. I get a chance to take pictures of flowers and other really beautiful things. And people say, well, you bring out the details that I would miss. And I'm able to put them on my store that I have on my blog. And I'm able to sell things with that too. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. And if you want to find me, I'm at www.mrsmichelle'smission.
Thank you, Michelle. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and giving people a perspective. I think this is a very powerful episode. I think that I would say this is one of the best episode I had on my podcast because it's going to help a lot of people, not only to actually educate myself too. I think I wasn't really aware of that until I first met you and we had our meet and greet discussion. That's why I was so really excited that you're going to be a guest on my podcast. I really want to truly thank you for your time. Really appreciate. Thank you for giving me a gift of time and also giving me my audience a gift of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.